Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschitari Shatarine. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Purnam Supripraj Kacharja Ashto Turasatashi Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Jamanamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Brinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Welcome to all. Thank you very much for coming. We're in Bridgewater, New Jersey today. And we're reading from Chaitanya Caritamrta, Adi 127. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Savivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pradhan Shahagana Lolita Sri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Banto Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Prisha Panu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vanshal Kolpatarupyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In this opening portion of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, Srila Kaviraj Goswami has given his invocatory verses, 14 if I believe I'm right. And now he's explaining these verses, going through them and telling us what they're about. The verses were in Sanskrit, the explanations will be in Bengali. So far he's explained in something about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Well, let us jump in. Echai shloke kohi Chaitanyera tattva arpancha shloke nityanandera mahatva. In these 6 verses, I've described the truth about Lord Chaitanya, whereas in the next 5, I've described the glory of Lord Nityananda. Ardvi shloke advaita tatvakyana areka shloke pancha tatvera vyakana. The next two verses describe the truth of Advaita Prabhu, and the following verse describes the Pancha Tattva, the Lord, his plenary portion, his incarnation, his energies, and his devotees. He chauda shloke kodi mangala charan tahi madhye kahisha vastu nirupan. These 14 verses, therefore, offer auspicious invocations and describe the supreme truth. Shabashota Vaishnave Rekodi Namaskare Shabashlokera Kodi Artha Vichara. I offer my obeisances unto all my Vaishnav readers as I begin to explain the intricacies of all these verses. Shakala Vaishnava Shuno Kodi Ekaman Chaitanya Krishnera Shastra Mata Nirupana. I request all my Vaishnav readers to read and hear with rapt attention this narration of Sri Krishna Chaitanya as inculcated in the revealed scriptures. Purport. Lord Chaitanya is the absolute truth, Krishna himself. This is substantiated by evidence from the authentic spiritual scriptures. Sometimes people accept a man as God on the basis of their whimsical sentiments and without reference to the revealed scriptures. But the author of Chaitanya Caritamrta proves all his statements by citing the Shastras. Thus, he establishes that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna Guru Bhakta Shakti Avatara Prakash Krishna Echa Rupe Korena Bilash. Lord Krishna enjoys by manifesting himself as the spiritual masters, the devotees, the diverse energies, the incarnations, and the plenary portions. They are all 6 in one. Echai tatvera kori charana bandhan pratame shamanye kori mangala charan. I therefore worship the lotus feet of these 6 diversities of the one truth by invoking their benedictions. Bande Guruni Shapaktan Isham Isha Avatarakan Tat Prakashangscha Tat Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Sangakam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnations, his plenary portions, his energies, and the primeval Lord himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Purport. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has composed this Sanskrit verse for the beginning of his book. and now he will explain it in detail. He offers his respectful obeisances to the 6 principles of the Absolute Truth. Gurun is plural in number because anyone who gives spiritual instructions based on the revealed scriptures is accepted as the spiritual master. Although others give help in showing the way to beginners, the guru who first initiates one with the Maha Mantra is to be known as the initiator, and the saints who give instructions for progressive advancement in Krishna consciousness are called instructing spiritual masters. The initiating and instructing spiritual masters are equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, although they have different dealings. Their function is to guide the conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami accepted Nityananda Prabhu and the 6 Goswamis in the category of Guru. So these are powerful explanations of the role of Guru, enlightening explanations of the role of Guru. The Kaviraj Goswami has stated that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Krishna himself, manifests himself in different forms, and 6 different forms. And one of these is the spiritual master. The spiritual master is considered as good as Krishna, Sakshat Haritena Samhasta Shastre. And the spiritual master appears in 2 different ways, as the instructing guru and as the initiating guru. And we'll hear more about this as we go along. This is significant that they're equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, although they function differently. Isha Bhaktan refers to the devotees of the Lord, like Sri Srivas and all other such followers, who are the energy of the Lord and are qualitatively non-different from him. Ishavatarakan refers to acharyas like Advaita Prabhu, who is an avatar of the Lord. Tat Prakashan indicates the direct manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nityananda Prabhu, and the initiating spiritual master. Tat Shakti refers to the spiritual energies, Shaktis, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar, Damodar, and Jagadananda belong to this category of internal energy. Significant. When we hear of Gadadhar, Damodar, and Jagadananda are in that same category of the Lord's internal energy. The 6 principles are differently manifested, but all equally worshipable. Krishnadas Kaviraj begins by offering his obeisances unto them to teach us the method of worshiping Lord Chaitanya. The external potency of Godhead, called Maya, can never associate with the Lord, just as darkness cannot remain in the presence of light. Yet darkness, being but an illusory and temporary covering of light, has no existence independent of light. So when we hear of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, the Maya, the illusory energy, is not included. But Maya is also dependent on the Lord. Mantra Guru Arjata Sikha Guru Gan Tahara Choran Hage Koriye Bondan. I first offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami, in his thesis Bhakti Sandarbha, has stated that uncontaminated devotional service is the objective of pure Vaishnavas, and that one has to execute such service in the association of other devotees. By associating with devotees of Lord Krishna, one develops a sense of Krishna consciousness and thus becomes inclined toward the loving service of the Lord. This is the process of approaching the Supreme Lord by gradual appreciation in devotional service. If one desires unalloyed devotional service, one must associate with devotees of Sri Krishna. For by such association only can a conditioned soul achieve a taste for transcendental love and thus revive his eternal relationship with Godhead in a specific manifestation and in terms of the specific transcendental mellow, rasa, that one has eternally inherent in him. This is interesting that Srila Prabhupada presents that a particular relationship with Krishna is inherent in every living being. If one develops love for Krishna by Krishna conscious activities, one can know the supreme absolute truth. But he who tries to understand God simply by logical arguments will not succeed, nor will he get a taste for unalloyed devotion. Krishna conscious activities, not logical arguments. The secret is that one must submissively listen to those who know perfectly the science of God. And one must begin the mode of service regulated by the preceptor. A devotee already attracted by the name, form, qualities, etc. of the Supreme Lord may be directed to his specific manner of devotional service. He need not waste time in approaching the Lord through logic. The expert spiritual master knows well how to engage his disciples' energy in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and thus he engages a devotee in a specific devotional service according to his special tendency. This is of interest. The advanced devotee, someone who's already attracted to the name, form, qualities of the Lord, can be directed toward a particular manner of devotional service. And the spiritual master is expert in engaging the disciples in a particular service according to his special tendency. This can be taken in terms of practical activities of this world, or the particular internal mood of devotional service. A devotee must have only one initiating spiritual master, because in the scriptures, acceptance of more than one is always forbidden. There's no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. One should always remember that a person who is reluctant to accept a spiritual master and be initiated is sure to be baffled in his endeavor to go back to Godhead. One who is not properly initiated may present himself as a great devotee, but in fact, he is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on his path of progress towards spiritual realization, with the result that he must continue his term of material existence without relief. Such a helpless person is compared to a ship without a rudder, for such a ship can never reach its destination. It is imperative, therefore, that one accept a spiritual master if he at all desires to gain the favor of the Lord. The service of the spiritual master is essential. If there's no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. There's no difference between the spiritual master's instructions and the spiritual master himself. In his absence, therefore, his words of direction should be the pride of the disciple. If one thinks that he is above consulting anyone else, including a spiritual master, he is at once an offender at the lotus feet of the Lord. Such an offender can never go back to Godhead. It is imperative that a serious person accept a bona fide spiritual master in terms of the Shastric injunctions. Sri Jiva Goswami advises that one not accept a spiritual master in terms of hereditary or customary social and ecclesiastical conventions. One should simply try to find a genuinely qualified spiritual master for actual advancement in spiritual understanding. Customary social and ecclesiastical conventions. Ecclesiastical means having to do with a church. And one can think about what this means in terms of our present arrangement, where there are specific rules and regulations for who one can accept and who one can't accept as a spiritual master, according to a determination by the ISKCON's governing body. Sri Jiva Goswami advises that one not accept a spiritual master in terms of hereditary or customary social and ecclesiastical conventions. One should simply try to find a genuinely qualified spiritual master for actual advancement in spiritual understanding. All right, we've covered a lot of territory here. Well, let's see. Let's read a little bit more. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasha Raghunatha. My instructing spiritual masters are Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Bhatta Raghunath, Sri Jiva Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Echae Guru Sikha Guru Ye Amara Taj Sabara Pada Padme Koti Namaskar. These six are my instructing spiritual masters, and therefore I offer millions of respectful obeisances unto their lotus feet. Purport: by accepting the 6 Goswamis as his instructing spiritual masters, the author specifically makes it clear that one should not be recognized as a Gaudiya Vaishnav if he is not obedient to them. So Kaviraj Goswami has explained the verses concerning the spiritual master or spiritual masters, Gurun, Bande Gurun. And now he'll go on to speak about the devotees, Isha Bhaktan. Any questions so far? Or else we can read on. Okay.
Hold on, Meena Prabhu. There's something going on with the sound.
Okay, let's see what's happening technologically here. I think Meena Devi has a print, but her sound messed up.
Maybe you could sign out and sign back in again?
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama.
Kishori has her hand up also. Kishori Mataji.
Kishori has her hand up. Okay.
No, it's actually Lalita Prasad Das.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I have a question regarding the qualifications of a spiritual master. Will it be correct to say that the samsara prayers embody the qualifications of the spiritual master, that basically, if I want to know if you are a bona fide spiritual master, those are the standards that I should observe in the candidate for aspiring spiritual master, or is it necessary to, as ISKCON and somewhat, has recommended I think it's a 6-month course to determine what a spiritual master is. That's one question, and the second question is that is it a year? Well, I don't know if this is correct, but I've heard that one should at least observe the one that one chooses to be a candidate for a spiritual master for at least a time period of 1 year, and not just jump into it whimsically and just take anybody. So
Yeah.
The samsara prayers and the 1 year issue. Thank you.
Let's take it in reverse order. Sri Jiva Goswami, if I have it right, recommends that for a year, the spiritual master should examine the disciple, and the disciple should examine the spiritual master. So, as you say, not that they just jump in. From both sides, this examination, if you will, or yes, should take place. So, yes, that's there. Now, as far as using the samsara prayers as what would you say, a standard for selecting a spiritual master, the usual verses that Srila Prabhupada invoked were Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam, Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam Shabde Pradesh Nishnatam Brahmani Tadu Upamashrayam Samupayamashrayam and Tadvigyanartam Sa Guru Meva Bigachet Samitpani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. These were Srila Prabhupada's headline verses for determining who's a bona fide spiritual master. Shrotriyam, he should have heard from the parampara, as Prabhupada says in the purport we just read, he should know the science. And Brahmanishta, he should have full faith in Krishna. He should have realization. Realization means practical application of the principles of devotional service in life. Yes. So those two things. You should have book knowledge and vigyan, realized knowledge, practical knowledge of devotional service, experience of devotional service. Those were the two. The samsara prayers, as we call them, Gurvastakam. Someone said they should be called the anti-samsara prayers. Describe and glorify the spiritual master. We need to be a little careful. One time, I asked Srila Prabhupada a question. I actually had one question in mind, and he answered another. I won't go into the question that I wanted to ask him, but anyway, I started to ask Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, in the Gurvastakam prayers, it describes that the spiritual master is always engaged in activities, Nikunja Yuno Ratikalis Vidhai. And Srila Prabhupada interrupted my question and said, that's if he's in that particular relationship. I speculate that he answered, that he assumed that that's what I had in mind, because he must have been asked that question before. What if the spiritual master is not in Madhurya Ras? What if he's in Vatsalya Ras? What if he's in Sakya Ras? So, because that question might have been asked, that's my speculation. Srila Prabhupada assumed that that's the question I had in mind. In any case, that's what he said. So then if we hold this principle that the samsara prayers are the standard, well, then the person who's not in the Madhurya Ras doesn't meet the standard. But Prabhupada said, no. He said, that's if he's in that relationship. So that's one point. We might also ask, can we tell? Is this something that we can apply practically? If I'm a candidate seeking a spiritual master, can I know, or how can I know that the spiritual master is or is not engaged in activities to assist Srimati Radharani and the gopis in loving affairs? So these are confidential subjects, which may be difficult for us to examine, to penetrate. But samsara dava nalalita loka, that certainly applies. He should be able to rain upon the disciples the mercy of Krishna's instructions. He should be engaged, Mahaprabhu, Kirtan and Nritya Gita, in chanting Hare Krishna, in the activities of the Sankirtan movement. He should be engaged in the service of the deity, Sri Vigraha. He should be He should relish honoring Krishna Prasadam and seeing the devotees honoring Krishna Prasadam. He should be respected as a direct manifestation of the Lord. And one should understand that when he's satisfied, then Krishna is satisfied. Does that answer your question, Lalit Prasad Prabhu?
Excellent, Maharaj. That was just amazing. Thank you so much for your mercy. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Meena Devi, you're back. Let's see what happens.
Maybe. Can you hear me now? Hare Krishna.
Very well.
Thank you for taking my question. Kaviraj is saying that he has these instructing gurus, the Goswamis. Did he actually have, like, were they present, physically present? Did he meet them? Did he have like physical association with them? Or is he taking their instructions from their writings? Do we know?
Do we know? I'm trying to remember my history, on which I'm bad. I believe he did at least some of these Goswamis. Raghunath Das Goswami, he did. I don't know to what extent he had the association of all of them. I'm notoriously bad on history and memory tasks. Is someone good at this who could fill me in? Maybe not. It could be a research question for someone who'd like to fill us in perhaps next time or later. Sorry that I'm not more. Joseph O'Connell would have told you in 2 seconds the answer to that question. The man was phenomenal. Professor Joseph O'Connell. He knew everything about, everybody and his brother in Chaitanya Lila. He was so conversant. But
I guess the reason I was asking was because to throw a little more light on how this instructing spiritual master relationship, if it can be, if they have to actually be present even on the planet at the time. I guess that's why I was asking that.
Yeah. I don't have a direct answer for you. Certainly, it's implied that well, Srila Prabhupada says, generally the spiritual master who instructs becomes the initiating spiritual master. So it's understood that would imply physical presence, but whether that's an absolute requirement that the instructing spiritual master be physically in this world, I'm not able to answer. I don't have hadn't been asked that question before. Sorry. Again, if someone would like to do some research, really I should do the research, but or I should assign this to someone. Would anyone like to take up this topic as a research item?
I would love to, but I don't want to depend on me to find the answer.
Well, I could suggest a shortcut that Hari Parshada, who is expert in these matters, you might ask him. Okay. There's a lot happening in the chat box, so let me look at that. Venkatesh says, what to do if several instructing spiritual masters inspire us in our journey? How to follow several of their instructions. Some instructions seem more inspiring than others. and we may end up in selective devotional service. Seems the disciple has to be really mature to harmonize apparent contradiction in instructions also. Yes, everything has to be done with a certain amount of, with thought, with discretion, with a humble mood. If we're looking to pick and choose according to our own whims or our own, what suits us, it doesn't matter how many instructing spiritual masters we have. Really, we'll be following our own minds, our own senses. Whether I have 1 or 30, the outcome is going to be the same. I'm going to do what I want to do. So one has to be humble. Pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So humility is the beginning of knowledge. Amanitva adam pitva himsa shanti rajana. The beginning is amanitva, to be humble. So the humble disciple, the gentle disciple, is not looking for, he's not judge shopping the way lawyers do, looking for a judge who will render a decision in his favor or in favor of what he wants. He's looking for genuine guidance, genuine instruction. So for such a person, these kinds of contradictions will not be so problematic. It's for the person who's looking for what he wants. For him, it will be difficult. A key understanding is that all of these spiritual masters are representatives of Krishna. So we would expect that the spiritual masters are working together, whether it's deliberately working together or whether they're simply representing Krishna. Krishna is acting through these different spiritual masters to deliver the disciple, to guide the disciple, to engage the disciple in Krishna's service. So if we see it that way, how do I try to satisfy my gurus? How do I try to satisfy Krishna? By following their instructions. And then dadami buddhi yogam tam. Otherwise, if I have my own agenda, it will be difficult. I hope that helps. Kendra says, when Srila Prabhupada says that one who is not properly initiated is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on his path of progress towards spiritual realization, is he referring to a person without any guidance whatsoever? Or also to those who may be at the stage of reading his books and operating within ISKCON? And could you say what the differences are between the stumbling blocks faced by the uninitiated and those faced by the initiated devotees? One who's not properly initiated is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks. Certainly at the most, what obviously presents itself is a person who's unwilling to be initiated, a person who thinks he doesn't need to be initiated. There's a sort of thread running through that section of the purport. A person who thinks he doesn't need to be initiated is like a person, like a ship without a rudder, no guidance, no direction. So that shouldn't be there. That no, I don't need a guru. I can read Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is my guru. Not like that. Again, amanitva, one has to be humble, not think, yes, I know everything, or yes, why should I need a guru? Then he'll be lost. He'll encounter many stumbling blocks. From one point of view, we can say that a person who's guided is already under the care of guru. The instructing gurus are already there. He's not unguided. He's only in the beginning stage, but he's under proper guidance. The person who's wandering around, he's sincere, but there's no one to guide him. He's going to have a lot of trouble. But a person properly guided will make progress. If only the next progress is you should be initiated, you should. Therefore, Prabhupada emphasizes sadhu sangha in the purport. There's a section where Prabhupada's very strongly asserting that to make progress, one needs to be in the association of devotees. Adau Shraddha Ta Sadhu Sangota Bhajana Kriya. We need to associate with devotees. The devotees will give us initial guidance. We hear of the Vartma Pradarshaka Guru, the kind of instructing spiritual master, a person who shows us the path, the direction. We come into the devotees and the devotees, into the association of devotees, and they kindly guide us how to make progress, how to find a bona fide spiritual master and be initiated, all of these things. So such a person is not like a ship without a rudder and no direction. He's only in the beginning stages, but he'll go from the beginning stage to the next stage. But the person who thinks, well, I don't need a guru, or why should I have a guru, or book is my guru, he'll have problems. I hope that's all right.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Haridas says, while a prospective disciple is approaching a prospective spiritual master, should he or she proceed following the submissive inquiry and rendering service model? And if one does not approach in this way, out of an objective analysis stance, how will that affect the development of faith? One must. Pranipatena, pariprashnena, sevaya. One must be humble, otherwise forget it. What are you doing approaching a guru? But really, what's the absolute truth? That's not going to get me very far. One has to be humble. And one has to render service, because service is the key to understanding. If we don't serve, we're not going to be able to understand anything. So service is an essential component. And pariprashna, submissive inquiries. We may personally put inquiries. We may listen as others are asking. That's also, we'll learn that way, by hearing. We may have our questions, and we may, yes, by hearing. If we don't follow this process, pranipad, pariprashnena, seva, then it means we don't have the initial prerequisite faith. We start with a little faith at least. Prabhupada, when he would get challenging questions, sometimes, can you tell me this? Prabhupada would say, if I tell you, would you believe me? Because if the answer is no, there's no use talking to you. You're not going to accept what I say. Why should I waste my breath? So the submission is an important element, at least initial faith, and then that faith becomes stronger. It's meant to become stronger, guru nishta, stronger and stronger, so that one does advance more and more. What is that? The samshayatma vinashyati, the person who's full of doubts and doubts and doubts will be lost. They'll be finished. So one has to have faith in the spiritual master. Otherwise, his process will, he'll have problems. He'll become puffed up and think at some point that he knows better than the spiritual master. Then he's doomed. Then he's doomed. One has to be always submissive and always think of oneself as a servant of the spiritual master, not as the person on whom the spiritual master is dependent, or who needs to be corrected by our superior understanding, whom we can judge by our mundane eye. We need to be humble servants of the spiritual, because the spiritual master is the representative of Krishna. Do we think that we know more than Krishna, that we're better than Krishna, that we'll use Krishna for our purpose? So these are some thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tulsi Priya.
I'm going to pass on the question right now. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Murari Gupta says, I meet people online who are reading and chanting regularly and following the 4 regulative principles, and they want to take initiation, but they are far from a temple and have no contact with devotees in person, only YouTube videos, lectures, Prabhupada's books, etc. Sometimes they are housewives whose husbands aren't so devotionally inclined, or students who are living at home and the parents don't want any interruption in their study. Can you suggest something I can recommend to them? These days, association is available online. There's of course the old method of letters. People used to write to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada conducted everything practically by post. So there's mail, there's online. There are different ways of taking guidance from the spiritual master or prospective spiritual master, and rendering service also. That's the good side of the internet. We've many times spoken of the dark side, but the good side is that one can associate with advanced devotees from all over the world. One can hear their classes, one can come in touch with them, one can write to them, one can, yes. Sometimes we can find members of their community. You know, the spiritual master may be very far, but his disciples or devotees may be more accessible. We know our Sankarshan Prabhu was a pioneer in developing relationships with people on the internet and giving them good instructions. And many people became his disciples. That way, really, his whole ministry was an internet-based ministry from the very beginning. And these people connected with him from all over the world. And he has disciples from all over. So that's possible. Now, of course, Sankarshan Prabhu is no longer alone, but there are so many. So go on hearing. So many advanced devotees are there. Go on hearing, go on hearing. That would be my suggestion. And if you find that there's resonance, that you're getting something, then offer some service. What can I do for you? And which ties into Jai Gorsinder's question, what type of service the disciple should perform? Physical or any other type of service? What type would it be? Well, we hear Samat Pani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. He should approach the spiritual master carrying firewood in his hand, because the guru performs sacrifices and the disciple assists by bringing wood. That's practical. Krishna was doing that for his Guru Maharaj, Sandipani Muni, bringing firewood. So, of course, firewood is not the only thing, but practical service. The spiritual master has something he wants done. Satsvarup Maharaj was typing for Srila Prabhupada and giving donations and bringing a mango every day. So that's service. The mango was for Prabhupada's personal pleasure. The typing was for his work. So there are different kinds of service. There's, yes, personal service. There's cooking, there's serving, there's financial contributions, there's the missionary work of the spiritual master. What can I do? There's always something that needs to be done. There's always some way that I can contribute, big or small. Srila Prabhupada used to appreciate. I remember Bhujan Prabhu was sending, not a big donation, but sending. And if more disciples had thought about it, they could have also been just directly sending something to Srila Prabhupada. He wasn't getting so much for his personal travels and so on. But Bhujan Prabhu was regularly sending, and Srila Prabhupada was regularly appreciating it. There was some connection. I mean, if there's connection with all disciples, but he was writing and appreciating. But he wasn't sending, big bucks, but he was sending something. Let me serve you. So the humble disciple will want to do that. Let me look for ways to serve the spiritual master. Well, there's a hand still up, and yet we're out of time, Kevin Prabhu. So it's probably not a short question either, but that would be my guess. What should we do? Shall we stop?
Yeah, we should stop. It's not going to be a short.
Okay, so we'll stop here and we'll continue again next Thursday. And again, thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.